With the right techniques, gardens can be made to feel larger or more intimate, or both. Even the feeling of movement and energy can easily be achieved to create your own unique and special place. You're in for a real treat today as we talk about some of those ideas from two very different gardens as we garden smart in Dallas, Texas. We're here with Dave Ralston. Dave, you're a landscape architect here in Dallas, right?
Yes, I've been here for 25 years.
Well, I've already been tipped off that we're in for a treat, and as I look around your front yard, I can see some really great looking plants, but I also look behind me and I say, wow, that's a cool house. So tell me about that.
Well, this house originally was designed as a modern house, and it was in a magazine. It was 1949, and the owner gave it to the contractor and said, make this house colonial. So when we got the house, it was kind of a weird kind of mix of styles. So we've been slowly transforming the house and making it look a little bit more contemporary, a little modern.
Sure. Now, what were her plans for the outside? Did you incorporate any of her original plans there?
Well, when we bought this house, we got a book with the house, and the book was how she built the entire house, and it had dreams of every room and all the landscape, and it showed garden rooms, fountains, little nooks, and all this. It was really an incredible set of wishes that she had for the garden. But when we got the house, it was just a square patch of St. Augustine lawn and iris in a straight line around the perimeter.
So I imagine it might look a little bit different now?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, well, I'm anxious to see it, so let's go take a look.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I was telling you, Joe, about the iris, and the fact is that we had this coral bean bush here. And this coral bean bush is a perennial that freezes back to the ground every winter, comes up, bursts forth with foliage in the spring. About a month after it comes out of the ground, it blooms these incredible coral flowers, and it just covers the plants. It's a real showstopper.
Yeah, I bet that looks really great. And I'm sure your landscape projects do as well. Do you have sort of a signature or a trait that's consistent from project to project with your clients?
Well, people say I do. If I do a formal landscape, if I do a gardening type of landscape, it seems that they always kind of know that I did it because it's the way I do this juxtaposition of plants. It's something that I just feel. I just arrange them in a way that's Dave Ralston.
So somewhat intuitive.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
Okay, well, here's my next question. Are you the cobbler's kids who doesn't have any time to work in his garden because it doesn't look that way? It looks like you spend hours out here.
Well, it took a lot of hours to establish this garden, and in the beginning I spent 25 hours a week gardening, and I was pretty addicted to my landscape garden and constructing it. Then about 5 years ago, we adopted a daughter from China, and it was an incredible change in our life, and we had to change the way we were in our lives so that we had time for our daughter and raising her. So what I've done is I've remodeled the landscape, changed a lot of plants, changed some of the things, and learned a lot, and now I'm down to about 4 or 5 hours a week.
No kidding. Well, maybe some more low maintenance plants then, I would think.
Yeah, and it's also just the way I arrange them, and it's the way I work with them that it just makes it easier. So when I was gardening 25 hours a week, I had kind of a Monet garden, a lot of perennials, a lot of annuals, and to keep everything in sequence, you really have to do a lot of thought and planning and rearranging and dividing plants and all. And so when I tried to cut down my labor, I've gone towards texture and color. And the difference is that it's so much easier and actually more fun because the subtlety of creating a really great look with texture and color and just a few perennials in here and there, it really makes the garden spectacular.
Makes a lot of sense. Wow, Dave, as I look across the backyard, the views go on forever, and yet at the same time I get the sense that I'm in a more intimate space. I'm not sure how big your yard is, but tell me about some of those landscaping tricks and how big is this yard?
It's 2/3 of an acre, which is pretty big by urban standards. But I've borrowed a lot of views. There's an iron fence over here. You can see into the neighbors. You can see into the park beyond us. And you can see over here to this 1.5 acre property. And so what happens is you keep the plants low, you get to look into them. You really don't lose that much privacy, but you get to borrow the view.
Okay, now you said something about you like to prune. In fact, some people say you prune to a fault, maybe a little too much, but that can be a good thing at times, right?
Well, there's a winter honeysuckle back here that was all the way to the ground. You couldn't see anything underneath it. I started pruning on it and started exposing the trunks and the branches and all, and it was really a beautiful tree that I've created a focal point around.
And it allowed that borrowed view, as you say, right?
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I like that.
Okay, well, let's talk about those garden rooms that you've created also. So in that 2/3 of an acre, I feel like there's a lot of different places I can go and feel like I'm in my own special place. How have you accomplished that?
Well, I don't want your eye to go and see everything at once. So I block your eye and I make your eye move around. And so I've used the grass as a ribbon, kind of like a waterway to flow down. It falls almost 8 feet in this backyard. So you really get a sense of movement.
Okay, so you move us through with the pathways. What do you do with the plant material?
Well, I've bermed up the land and I've used plants so that it actually creates a walled space, and you actually have to look and around a corner, go into the space, and then you're in a new space.
And when you burn that up, are you bringing in soil, or are you using that from some other part of your garden, or what?
I've basically used all the areas that I've dug water features in and dug that soil out and put it up to use berms.
Okay, very resourceful. Well, Dave, this pathway has led us down into what I feel like is a bowl effect in this lower room. So tell me about your thought as you designed this room. How did that happen?
Well, I tried to create a distinctive space that had its own feel. I bermed it up over here, and all this dirt has come from the pond up at the top. And then this was a slope space that went from here all the way up to there in a gentle slope. I dug the dirt out from here, made this flat, put it on top so that that area up there is flat, and then created the transition of the stairway between. This is an architectural movement here. Right here is a ramp. And I was once told by a designer that whenever you go into a room, you should always have an entrance and an exit. It makes you feel more comfortable, and you always feel like there's a place to go. You don't feel claustrophobic.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, this being the lower room, I guess the water flows certainly from high to low, but would it continue to go outside of your property onto your neighbor's property?
Well, that's what the berming is for. We also wanted that visual feeling of a bowl, but also I'm kind of greedy. I like to save all the water I can and keep it on my property. So I've actually bowled this out, and it soaks right in here. It's really great for the trees and all.
Okay, so this is the lower elevation room. And then as we transition up that staircase, in this case, our exit from here, you go into another room. Tell me about some of the other thoughts.
Well, we've got a formal alley, kind of a sight line with a fountain at the end of it. And that's the room that is off my wife's studio. And she has the view of that all the time. And it's a very kind of intimate view, but you get to feel like, oh my God, how big is this landscape? Because you're only seeing one room of that view. And then I've got little seating areas. There are foliage and shade. I've got seating areas that are in the full sun. I've got a fish pond, and then I've got a little wading pool for my daughter that's 18-foot diameter, only 1.5 feet deep, but it's really fun for them.
We keep talking about these pools and water features, and I hear them, but I don't see them. So can we go find one of those? That must be in one of your other secret rooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Joe, this is an example of a garden room that I've created. This is underneath the honeysuckle bush that I trimmed on. And this is a fish pond that is gunite, and it's got a biological filter. I clean the filter about once every month and a half, every 2 months. It takes me 10 minutes, and it really isn't a lot of work. I let the fish kind of eat the algae off the sides, and I don't really tend to them too much, and it's just pretty low maintenance. Before, I had a stream that went from the upper pool all the way down and terminated at the bottom of the property. It leaked, I built it, it was not a professional thing, it was just a nightmare. So when we got our daughter, I remodeled everything, did it in gunite the way it should be done, and now it doesn't leak.
Okay, what about some of the other water features that you have?
Well, I've got a variety of different water features here, and what I would say is that I try not to obsess over everything matching too much, because I feel like If you go and find a room and then you find the same kind of thing again, it just kind of bores you after a while. So here's a fish pond. It's kind of organic and kind of a little bit more traditional. There's a circular pond up here that you can actually see from down here. So there's kind of a connect with the materials being the same stone here and the same stone there. But that's a little bit more formalized. It's an actual 18-foot diameter circle. Then we've got the copper kettle, which is a formalized idea. And then recently, I added the steel fountain that is totally contemporary and modern.
And speaking of contemporary and modern, you know, you've added some furniture in here that has that contemporary modern look, but I think it's an important point to address in a landscape design because it's not all about plants per se. You want to incorporate the water and the hardscapes and sometimes furniture, and you've done a great job with these. Talk about that for a second in landscape design.
Well, I've just used them almost like a perennial or seasonal color. It's a little bit of color that just sparks your eye. You see it from a distance, and so you're drawn over here and you say, hey, what's that? If this was a wood bench or something, it would just totally kind of blend in. So it's something a little bit more exciting that you notice from a distance.
Well, Dave, this has been a great experience. Thank you so much for showing us your beautiful backyard, and I can't think of a better way to end the day than right here.
Thank you. You're welcome to come back anytime.
Thanks.